Rachel Carson and her book that changed the world. Early one morning in May 1922, young Rachel Carson discovered a secret place deep in the woods, fragrant with pine needles. Witchety, 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 called a yellowthroat. Rachel followed the chanting wild bird up and down the hills along the Allegheny River, not stopping until she came upon its nest hidden in a bush. Closer, closer she crept. Click! Her camera captured 4 eggs, mottled white and brown, precious as shining fruit. All her life, Rachel Carson was curious and determined. She was born on May 27, 1907, on the outskirts of Springdale in a small town in Pennsylvania. Since her brother and sister were much older and neighborhood children seldom came to visit, Rachel often went on her own to explore her family's 65 acres of woods, orchards, and fields. Her doting mother also loved nature. She taught Rachel to skywatch on starry nights and how to recognize the haunting melody of a wood thrush. Rachel read constantly and worked hard in school. When she was only 11, her story about a brave pilot won a prize and was published in St. Nicholas Magazine for Children. She decided to become a writer. Times were tough. Rachel's father struggled to make a living as a traveling salesman. Her fiercely proud mother doubled her number of piano students and sold apples, chickens, even the family china to help send Rachel to Pennsylvania College for Women, later named Chatham College, in Pittsburgh. Academic scholarship in hand, Rachel climbed into a borrowed Model T and said goodbye. College was a new world for shy Rachel. While she enjoyed her writing classes, she felt awkward at parties and dances. When everyone else dressed up to go to a concert at Carnegie Music Hall, Rachel slipped away to study stuffed birds at the nearby Natural History Museum. Social life did not improve when Rachel's stern-faced mother appeared on campus nearly every weekend to type Rachel's papers. The summer when Rachel came home after her first year at college, a putrid smell lingered everywhere. Smoke clouded the sky. Pollution floated on the river. The woods were being cut down for factories and houses. Too many quarreling people crowded her family's cramped house. Her parents, her poverty-stricken brother and his wife and yowling baby, her divorced sister and her 2 mischievous toddlers. Even with a tent pitched in the front yard, there was scarcely room for everyone. Where could Rachel escape? All this filled her with sadness and worries about the environment and her own future. When she returned to college, a biology class taught by lively Miss Mary Scott Skinker changed her life. At a time when few women pursued careers in science, Rachel made up her mind to become a biologist. There was so much she wanted to learn about animals and plants. She knew she could find a way to pay for graduate school. Sure enough, she won a full scholarship to Johns Hopkins University. She received her master's degree, one of only a handful of women in her class. The Great Depression, a time of massive unemployment, dashed her hope of continuing her studies. No one wanted to hire a woman biologist. When her father died, 28-year-old Rachel was desperate for money to support her family. Her mother, ailing sister, and 2 young nieces lived elbow to elbow in Rachel's Maryland house. Part-time jobs teaching and writing newspaper articles barely paid the rent and grocery bills. Rachel reached out to her former teacher. "Take the government scientist test," Mrs. Skinker suggested. Rachel aced the exam, but still had no job offers. She did not give up. She kept knocking on doors and sending letters. One day, the chief of the Bureau of Fisheries interviewed Rachel. "Sorry, no jobs," he told her. Maybe she'd be interested in trying to fix dull radio scripts about sea life. Every other writer had tried and failed. "I've never seen a word of yours," she later remembered him saying, "but I'm going to take a sporting chance." This was Rachel's lucky break. Her scripts were a success. She landed a full-time job as a biologist at the Bureau of Fisheries, one of only 2 professional women on the staff. When she was assigned to write about the sea for a radio broadcast, the material, she said, rather took charge of the situation. Her boss read her lengthy work and handed it back to her with a twinkle in his eye. "I don't think it will do. Better try again, but send this one to the Atlantic." She followed his advice. When the magazine printed Undersea, Rachel was approached by an editor from a book publisher. Why not write about the sea for ordinary readers? In 1941, she published her first book, Under the Sea Wind, A Naturalist's Picture of Ocean Life, just as Pearl Harbor in Hawaii was bombed and America began its involvement in World War II. The book, mostly unnoticed, quickly disappeared from bookstore shelves. Rachel did not stop researching and writing about the remarkable connections in the web of life. Once you are aware of the wonder and beauty of Earth, she scribbled in her journal, you'll want to learn about it. As a biologist for 15 years, she went places where few women ventured. She did work performed by few women, counting deep-sea fish in foggy, dangerous currents of Nova Scotia, observing reef animals in a special suit with an 84-pound diving helmet off the coast of Florida, tracking alligators atop a rumbling glades buggy in the swampy Florida Everglades. Meanwhile, she worked on her own writing in the evening or on weekends. She began to notice disturbing trends. What happened to the web of life when more and more garbage was dumped into the ocean? How did rising ocean temperatures affect living creatures? In 1951, she published a bestseller, The Sea Around Us. A year later, she quit her job to write full-time. During the next 3 years, she researched and wrote The Edge of the Sea. She was so well known that people demanded her autograph in elevators, beauty parlors, taxicabs, and restaurants. In 1958, she began a difficult new project. When World War II ended, the chemical industry in the United States became very powerful. Heavy spraying of chemicals to kill insects was done routinely in parks and nature preserves, even in swimming pools and on crowded city streets. As early as 1945, Rachel had read about studies of declining bird populations across the country. Each year, researchers reported fewer nesting and migrating birds. The more she investigated, the more alarmed she became. Insecticides were deadly to birds, insects, fish, and other animals. What about people? No one had taken a stand against big business, federal agencies that approved chemical use, or universities that performed shoddy research about the effects of chemicals. She knew she was walking into dangerous territory. However, because she had no connection with industry, government, or any university, she felt she could gather facts more freely. People would read about what she wrote and fight to demand clear air, clean water. Only Rachel's closest friends knew she was in a race against time. In 1960, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her book, Silent Spring, was something she believed in so deeply. Nothing ever made me consider turning back. She worked for 4 years to complete Silent Spring. Her careful research about insecticides was slow. Her writing and rewriting was even slower. She wanted to create a book that everyone, not just scientists, could understand. In spite of being bedridden with illness and exhaustion, she refused to give up. I could never again listen happily to a thrush song, she explained, if I had not done all I could. In 1962, Silent Spring was published and became a bestseller. The book created a firestorm of criticism from the chemical industry. Congress held hearings, investigations followed, new laws were written. Rachel did not live to see the many positive environmental changes created by so many ordinary people inspired by her brave book. On April 14, 1964, just before an early spring sunset filled with birdsong, 56-year-old Rachel died.